Our next speaker is John Farrell. He's the Business Programs Director for Rural Development at the USDA.
So I work at USDA Rural Development. When I say I work from USDA, a lot of people think that I'm immediately a meat inspector or I do farm loans. I don't do any of that. I do rural development. I think, in my opinion, get to do the most fun things that there is, and that's working with our very small rural communities in Iowa. And so we have housing programs where we help people buy a home for the first time, build a home, get a house purchased. We can also do home repair loans for our elderly or people who have lower income needs and to help make health and safety improvements to their homes. We also have community programs, and those are more geared toward anything that's infrastructure related for a community: wastewater, towers, fire trucks, police stations, community buildings, hospitals, schools. We're involved in almost every community in Iowa in some aspect of that. And then what I work in most directly is in business programs. And we administer roughly 15 different programs, all geared towards economic development, business development, and also has some community economic development perspectives as well. So today, out of those 15, I'm going to talk about the Rural Energy for America program. And it is all geared towards energy efficiency and energy generation projects. So what does the Rural Energy for America program do? So this program is geared towards allowing rural small businesses and agricultural producers make energy efficiency improvements to their operations, but it also allows them to replace energy needs by installing energy generation type projects. And that can be anything like wind, solar, geothermal type activities. So who is eligible? They need to be either a rural small business, and we use the Small Business Administration's determination of what a rural small business is. There is a NAICS code associated with any type of business that exists out there. And it's either based on number of employees that they have, or it's based on the gross receipts that they have. I would say most businesses in Iowa fall within those thresholds okay, so there's not usually an issue there. This program can be for our for-profit entities as a rural small business. A rural electric cooperative could also be considered a rural small business, electric utility, and then also tribal corporations. We can also, the eligible applicant is also an agricultural producer. And to be an agricultural producer, you need to be someone who, or it could be also an entity. Our farm structures are organized in different ways, but they need to at least be producing at least 50% or more of their gross income from agricultural operations. Now, if you're a little bit below that, you can still apply as a real small business. If you're applying as a real small business, you do need to be in a community that's under 50,000 people. That is, for the most part, most of our business programs, it's geared towards our communities that's under 50,000 people. If you're applying as an agricultural producer, that 50,000 limitation doesn't apply. Now, if you're wondering, well, do I fit within the population? You can actually go to our website. There's an eligibility map. You can plug in your address, and it will tell you whether you're in an eligible community or not. So what are the types of projects that are actually eligible under our REAP program? Well, the most popular is our solar panels. We get lots and lots of applications every single year for solar type projects, but we can also do wind, geothermal. I don't do a lot of wave ocean in Iowa, but it is possible. Now, if you're wanting to apply as an energy replacement project, you do need the last 12 months of your electric bills, because we base everything on your scoring of your application based on how much energy you had been using compared to what they're projecting that you were planning to produce. And so the more energy you're going to save, the better you're going to score. But if you have a new building and you want to put on solar panels or do geothermal, we would just score it slightly different as a generation type project. It scores just a little bit less. We also, another arm of this program is energy efficiency. And so we can do, if you're like a manufacturer, you're a business, or if you got a farm operation, you want to do energy efficiency improvements, Those things can be like switching out switching out lights to LED lighting, or upgrading your HVAC system so that you've got more energy efficient heating and cooling, upgrading fans, insulation. I've seen greenhouses have updated their boilers and different things like that, all things that would improve energy efficiency. The one thing that you do need, though, is you need to have an energy audit or a resource assessment that's outlining all the things that they recommend that you have done. And so if it's 5 or 6 things on the list says it's going to provide energy efficiency, we can do the grant to cover those things. So it just needs to be covered in the audit. There is some additional requirements, and that is for every one of our projects, we do an environmental audit to make sure there's no effect on archaeological sites, historic buildings, or anything like that. Or if you're disturbing soil, we want to make sure that there's not an adverse effect on the environment. So always want to come to us first before you do anything, because you don't want to do anything that mitigates our ability to actually see what happened there, because that might cause your application to be deemed ineligible. So always talk to us first. So here's some examples, and I just threw some just random examples in here. We've done a lot of vet type clinics who have put on solar panels. For a lot of our businesses who do this, they say that cut their electric bills in half or way more than that. Electric cooperative can also apply, and that can help provide lower energy costs and more efficient energy generation through to their members. A grocery store could install geothermal into their systems. A laundromat could switch out their washers and dryers. A manufacturer could switch out all their LED lighting. A grocery store could replace all the doors on their coolers and freezers to help make them run more, operate more efficient. In this case, a gift shop, they upgraded their insulation and HVAC system. They could also do windows and doors if the energy audit recommended it. So what is not eligible? Well, the big thing that's not eligible is a house. We're not allowed to do residential living. If we could, we'd be super popular. But that is actually the one thing that's not eligible. And so if you did apply, and let's say your farm business or your business is connected to the same meter as your residence, we would just need to know through a home energy calculator. You can go on our website and figure that out. And we just need to know what the kilowatt hours is for your home, and we just subtract that amount off. The other thing is that we cannot reimburse costs that occurred before you submitted your complete application. So this is where it's really important that you let us know that you want to do this project. You get your application submitted with us, and then the next day you can start your project. So I recommend work with us, get your application put together. Once we look at it and we can tell it's a complete application, then you can get started on your project. We determine eligible costs as those that have incurred after you submitted a complete application. So we look at your canceled checks. That's how, because when we go to the reimbursement stage, we need your invoices and canceled checks, and that's what we're looking at. Now, sometimes people say, well, the contractor's telling us we need to lock in our rates to get a better rate. We need we'll have to provide a down payment. That's fine. Provide a down payment. Just make sure that's very clear in your application, and then we'll just subtract that amount off when we determine what are eligible costs that we can reimburse. So it's still not eligible, but you can still submit an application. It's not going to cause it to be ineligible. So what are the different types of funding that we have for this type of initiatives? We can do grants. I would say most of what we do is grants, but we can also do loan guarantees. If you have a very, very large project, let's say it's getting into the millions, you can work directly with a lender, a bank, credit union. You can negotiate your rates and terms with them, and then they can come to us for a backing on that loan. And so we can provide 80% guarantee on that loan. We can also do loan and grant combos in certain situations. So your minimum, so we do have some minimums and maximum requirements here. So you can do, your minimum has to be, the total project cost has to be at least $10,000 if you're doing renewable energy like solar panels, geothermal, that type of thing. And you need to have at least $6,000 total project cost for energy efficiency. So if you're like switching out your lights and that type of thing. The maximum grant amount is $1 million for renewable energy. The maximum grant amount is $500,000 for energy efficiency. With the Inflation Reduction Act, this allowed all these amounts to change and be updated with higher amounts. Guaranteed loan, minimum $5,000, maximum request on a REAP guaranteed loan is $25 million. Most people don't realize that we can actually go that high. So in the Inflation Reduction Act, they put in over a little over $2 billion for this particular program, and that is not a typo. That is $2 billion. And so that is going to be available for over a 10-year period. And so some of that is also dedicated to underutilized technologies. And then underutilized technologies is one that has zero, no carbon emissions, and the technologies represents less than 20% of grant dollars that we have received basically in the last 2 fiscal years. We have moved to a quarterly deadline, so there's no rush. You've got plenty of time to get an application put together. You just submit your application. You don't have to wait for the quarterly deadline. You can submit your application any time of the year if you want to. You could do it today, tomorrow. But we do have quarterly deadlines when we actually process them and get them moved forward. We have a website. It will show you how to apply. It will also list grant writers and energy auditors and those who are available to write a grant. You're not required to get a grant writer, but just know that the program is competitive and that the grant writers have figured out how to write these applications. So it will make your life a little bit easier if you did get a grant writer, but you're not required to do it. But I just want you to know that at USDA, we don't write the grants for you. So you would have to, spend a little time to get that figured out. I encourage you to read the fact sheet and the Federal Register notice. And my understanding, this presentation will be available for you. And so, feel free to look out our website and take a look at it. And so here's my contact information, and I'll be available later if you have any questions.